Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Laid Off Legends podcast. I'm your host, Leo, a Microsoft Principal Product Manager that was laid off last October. What happens when you leave everything behind for your dream job only to be laid off less than 30 days later? Today's guest did exactly that. He relocated across the country, signed a long-term lease, left behind a home of over 15 years, and within weeks found himself unemployed, in debt, and stranded. This isn't just about a layoff, it's about broken promises, leadership communication failures, and the human cost of business decisions. And while this story starts with heartbreak, it's also about resilience, giving personal experiences a voice, and sharing a story that resonates with so many others. For every person who feels alone or powerless in a layoff experience, this episode is for you. Ali Khani, welcome to the Laid Off Legends podcast.
Thank you, Leo. It's really good to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Now let's start from the beginning. What company was it and what was your role there?
So the company was called Canoo. It was an electric vehicle startup. My initial role there was a senior technician. So I was basically manufacturing parts for the vehicles.
Did you work on a large team? Were you working by yourself? What was your structure there?
It was a very small team. There was only 2 or 3 people working directly with me, and our department was always the busiest, overworked all the time.
What did your department do?
So we manufactured composite components. We basically made all the outer body panels for the cars, a lot of the inner body panels, structural components.
What attracted you to work for Canoo in the first place?
I've really worked for myself my whole life. Between 2019 and 2023, things got really difficult for me, and I started looking for a job. So I applied to many jobs, and Canoo came up, and they were less than 2 miles from my house. Really good pay rate for the position. I'd say above what other roles were asking. And so I interviewed, and they offered me the job, and I took it. It seemed pretty amazing because it was so close and convenient, and the pay was great, and the benefits were really good. And that's how I started.
What was the vibe like at the company when you started?
It was kind of two different things because it's this big building, super high tech, the big lobby and snack areas and break rooms and all the fancy things of like modern corporate life. But being in the manufacturing level, they had this weird thing where they would ignore the new guy for a while. So there was a few months where everyone ignored me, and it was really difficult. But after I got past that and started meeting people and building relationships, the vibe was generally pretty nice, positive, and everyone was really friendly after a while. And I met a lot of great people that I still communicate with.
So it sounded like a little bit of a rough onboarding, but over time you got into the flow.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you're based in California. What was the decision to relocate? How did that come up in terms of the company going from California to Texas?
Correct. It was from the Los Angeles area to Dallas Fort Worth area in Texas. There was a meeting August 15th, I believe, 2024, and they announced they're moving the headquarters to a location in Texas, and that they were going to either offer you a relocation package, or your work with them would end on a certain date. I think it was maybe the end of September or the end of October. I don't remember. That's how we were notified.
So you just joined the company. What was it like with your teammates? Were you guys having fun together? Take us into the Canoe experience before these troubles happened.
Sure. Yeah. Bizarre because, like I said, our team was always super busy, but other teams around us had these tremendous down periods where they literally were doing nothing. So it was strange to be next to another team that was doing nothing, yet we were always overworked. In the beginning, we had a supervisor who I guess we wasn't very well liked, and left a few months into my employment, and I took on his role. And I think after that, the mood in my team became really positive and really, really good camaraderie, and a place that you wanted to work and come to every day, and be around people you enjoyed to spend time with.
A lot of our listeners aren't very familiar with the manufacturing process. You said you guys were super busy, but then the next team wasn't.
Yeah.
Were there things that had to be
Right.
handed off to them? Were there delays in the pipeline? What happened where there was such a mix of folks being busy and others not?
Yeah, I think the work we did was really labor intensive, and it was a long process from start to finish, from design to manufacturing to making the part, from the tooling to handing over a finished product for the fabrication department. And a lot of other teams, their scope is a little quicker. If they get handed a project, they can get that done fairly quickly. But we had the most labor intensive job in the whole company. I mean, that was a little bit of the difference. It's strange because, in my opinion, I think they had too many employees at one time, and they had a lot of people who, I don't know how to put it, but they weren't very busy. So they had a lot of staff and a lot of projects going on, but there was never a moment that I worked there where everyone was always busy. There was always people with a lot of downtime. Yeah.
It sounds like you guys had a very critical part of that supply chain responsibility.
Yeah, if we didn't make the parts, the vehicles wouldn't get done. We produced a large amount of components that made those vehicles.
What was the rationale behind the request to move from California to Texas?
Well, this is the interesting question because looking back on things, I don't believe the rationale was one of production or manufacturing. It may have been just to cut expenses and put themselves in a better position legally when the end came for the company. Yeah, because they wanted everyone to move basically, not just certain departments.
And so it was announced that folks would move from California to Texas.
Yeah, there were people that didn't get relocation offers, but I think the majority of people did. So there was a certain group that didn't get it, but the bulk of people did get offers.
So in the all hands meeting, they say, "Hey, look, we're moving." Some people get a relocation offer, and then the relocation starts when? Next week? 2 weeks from now? How was that presented?
So the meeting was August 15th, and I believe the initial deadline to accept the offers was the end of September, maybe September 30th or 29th.
And did you have to opt in to the relocation, or was this one where, you had to take it or leave it?
It was a take it or leave it. I mean, if you didn't take it, you were given a day where your employment was going to end.
Can you walk us your decision to relocate? What went into that choice for you?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to, and I had no. In the beginning, I had no interest in it, but I was put under a lot of pressure by my management to accept the offer. And, I just kept saying, well, it's not really a good enough offer for me to disrupt my whole life and move to Texas. And then I was told, well, give us a proposal. What would it take? So I basically sent them a proposal, and basically they agreed to it. So they gave me a very big raise, and I think they upped the relocation allowance by a little bit. Um, but I got nearly between 35 to 40% raise, or offer of a raise.
And this pressuring, what did that actually look like? Was it a set of emails? Were people calling you every day?
It was just the daily experience at work of constantly having your manager walk up to you and say, "Have you thought about this? I'm gonna go. I'd love for you to go. We need our team together. We have a team. We got to keep it together. It's going to be great. We're all going to make more money. We get to set up the facility how we like it. We can run the thing the way we want." The people below me were also getting the same pressure. And I must admit that I think I put pressure on them too because there was something in me that said, if I want to go, I want these guys to go with me because they were my team. So I was like, "Hey, let's go. Let's do it. Let's take a risk. Let's make more money." Because really, I switched from not wanting to go to wanting to go when they showed me the money. That was the decision process for me.
It's a job, and you're
Yeah.
working. You believe in what you do. Before we the move, what did it feel like leaving California, a home that you've been for so long?
It was like being in the twilight zone. I had been in my house for so long, and it was really my rock and my sanctuary. And I had a big workshop in that house and a big garage, and that's where I was able to generate money before I got this job doing projects for other people and things of that nature. And also, it was my like Zen space. When I come home, I can just go tinker or do something and relax. And leaving that was really difficult. And leaving my family, my parents, my sisters, my nieces and nephews. I'm a very outdoorsy guy. All the hobbies that I enjoy, I couldn't really do in Texas. So it was kind of traumatic in a lot of ways.
But in that year, you had built some credibility. You started managing a team.
Yeah, I took their quality from like down here to up here, and I think a lot of people that worked around me and my managers, they built a lot of faith and trust in me, and they always made me felt like I was doing a great job, and everyone was like, "You're doing so much better than the other guy, and the parts are so much better, and this and that." So I don't know that I believed in the company, but I believed in all the people around me.
And that in itself is powerful. It demonstrates the bond that you guys had. And so let's walk through the move. I mean, when did you arrive in Texas, and how was that settling in?
It was hard. I had to find a place to rent or to lease, and I did that. And I arrived the first day that my lease started, which was November 15th, 2024. I maybe I went overboard because I leased a three-bedroom house, and I'm just one guy, but a couple of the guys that moved with me were renting rooms in the house. So it worked out good because it made my expenses much cheaper, and they had a nice house to live in, and we were close, and we would go out and explore together and hang out on the weekends. That made it a lot better than just being alone in a place you'd never been.
There's also something about bonding with your work colleagues. You guys live together. To a certain extent, you may even work together in the same department. So I think that even drives even more sense of, hey, this was why we moved, right?
Yeah,
And when did you start sensing that something may be off here?
it was like day one. I entered this facility in Texas, and nothing was happening. None, because the few weeks before I actually moved, I scaled back my work days, and I had been told that things were going to get shipped and moved from our facility in LA to Texas and all these things. And when I got to Texas, there was no work to be done. None of our equipment was there. And in talking to the people that had got there before me, they had been sitting around for days or weeks twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do. So everyone was kind of in the same boat. So that was really troubling for me. I spent the first week basically pestering people, asking when's this gonna come, when's that gonna come, when can we start work? Because you're just showing up and you're not doing anything, and they're paying you for it, which to me is bizarre. But then I started hearing like the trucks weren't coming and bills didn't get paid. I started hearing things like they couldn't buy fuel for the trucks or pay trucking companies the money they had owed. And then that's when I was like, this is crazy town. Red flags going off everywhere. But I'm already here. What do you do?
Was there a site manager? Was there a number to call? What was the message to you all that were waiting for the equipment to arrive?
It was just make yourself busy and wait. The GM basically said it's gonna happen. There's some delays, but just do whatever you can around the facility to keep yourself busy. And we ended up having one project, one car that we were trying to complete that they had moved from Los Angeles, and so everyone there kind of jumped on it, and that's all we worked on in the time that I was there is just that one vehicle.
I think for any of us who have experienced a manufacturing site move, there's some hiccups. Things arrive late and stuff like that. But to move from super busy to zero sounds really fishy.
Yeah, and we had a big project back in LA, and they actually delayed our move. They extended our move. I mean, for my team, they said we had to be, I think, there in October, and they said wait till November because we wanted to finish this project. So even till the end, the last few days in LA, I was like, we got to get this done. This is a huge deal. And then you go directly from that to Texas, and there's crickets, and no mention of that project anymore.
And at this point, what are all your colleagues saying? Either your manager peers or other folks? Did they know or were they just as confused?
I think everyone was just as confused. No one had any answers. HR didn't have answers. My manager above me didn't have answers. The manager above him didn't have answers. And then week two, a few layoffs started to happen.
Let's talk about the layoffs. What did that day look like?
It was it was a bizarre day because the mood was down, and I think they had already happened. And I didn't know about it, but there was the Texas staff and the LA staff, the guys from Texas that have been there for several years already. And I had heard that some of those Texas guys had got laid off. It was grim. It it was dire. And immediately I thought they brought us in here from California just to lay off the guys that were here from Texas. And we all felt that.
How did the
These
layoff happen?
sure well these this was the first round, and it was on an individual basis. You just got a Teams message, called into the office, and you were laid off. And I think they laid off two or three guys that week. But not me, not anyone from California.
Was there any rhyme or reason to it? Oh, this specific department is being laid off, or was it really just by alphabetical order? How did that happen?
I don't think there was any rhyme or reason. I think they picked maybe one person from every department. The only common thread was they were all, I think, from Texas. Yeah.
From Texas, including the folks who moved from California.
No, no, these were all people that lived in Texas, had worked at the Texas facility for several years. Yeah. This was like the week one of the layoff.
And was it just manufacturing? Was it HR, finance, or was it just specific
There,
to you, you
there
guys?
was a few manufacturing, and I think maybe one or two people from the offices. I'm not sure what department.
How was leadership explaining what had happened, or was there even any message at all?
No, there was nothing. There was
And so
nothing.
the manager that laid you off, what did he say, or what did she say?
Well, my layoff came the next week. Okay, so the following week, we're now into the third week, I believe. We were a couple days into the work week, and we got a message from a manager that something catastrophically wrong had happened with one of our vehicles, and we all need to come into this meeting. So I'm like, oh my God, did I kill somebody? Did one of my parts fall off on the road? Something like this. We go into the meeting, and we're in kind of the bigger office, and I'm looking at everyone in like the manufacturing and fabrication is in there with me. And this gentleman comes out, and I recognized him, and he was, I think, from health and safety in the company. He wasn't HR, and he just said, due to the current economic condition, we're sorry to say you're all being furloughed. And we were all just blindsided because basically everyone in that room had just moved there. It could have been 3 days previous, it could have been 4 weeks previous. I don't think anyone was there longer than 4 weeks.
And how many people in the room at that point?
20, maybe between 20 and 27. Yeah.
How did you guys handle the news?
People exploded. I mean, there were people there that had sold their house and bought a house just a few days before. There was people there that had just gotten there a few days before. People were super angry, really angry. And the gentleman that gave us the news, as soon as those words came out of his mouth, he shut down. There was nothing further from him except email HR with any questions. And he basically stood there and got yelled at for a few minutes by everybody. And we all left. And that was it.
Were there any talk of any severance, any type of benefits that were provided to you all for moving? Or
No. They said we would hear from HR in a day or two. Then it would outline what the furlough would be. That was the only information we got at that meeting.
And did you receive the email on time? Was there any helpful information?
No, there was nothing. I got the email maybe the same day, and it was basically just if you need your medical insurance is going to end in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, here's a link to apply for Cobra insurance or something like that. Turn in your laptop, and that was it. There was no mention about severance, paying owed PTO, or anything like that.
Wow. So at the end of the day, did you all leave together? Did you go back home? What was happening with you and the community there?
Well, we didn't leave the facility initially. I think some guys got in their cars and stormed off, but the rest of us kind of huddled around and just talked for a few hours, maybe. Just in shock and disbelief. There's the guys from Texas that had been there for years, and the guys from California that literally just showed up. And we talked for a little bit, and then everybody left, and we all went home.
Was there any word from senior management or leadership at all about what just happened?
No, no. The general manager was in that meeting, and he was acting like he was completely surprised, taken aback. He claimed that he got the same information that the rest of us got, that something went wrong with the vehicle. He said he had no knowledge of the layoffs.
Did the California site close on the same day, or was that left open?
I think the California site had been closed up maybe a few days previous. I learned after the fact that they hadn't paid rent on that building in several months. And I think what had happened is the building owner basically locked them out of it.
How big was this facility? Is this a Safeway, Whole Foods?
In California or in Texas?
California.
In California, it was maybe the footprint of a Best Buy building or like a large Target, but two-story. The entire bottom floor was tech and manufacturing, and above was offices and engineering.
And then in Texas, it was the same size facility.
No, in Texas, it was like spread out like a campus, and there was a cluster of buildings here and a cluster of buildings there, kind of across the street from each other. So there was a couple of metal buildings for R&D and manufacturing. And across the street, there was some buildings for offices, and across the way, there was a building for painting and storage and things like that. It was very spread out.
And so at that point, you guys felt like it was not just your team, the entire company was going down. Was that information coming through, or did you guys feel that the layoff was really just specific to your team?
No, I think we all knew that the company was done because they laid off every single person that ever made a vehicle for them. I mean, without us, they could not produce anything. So what do you have at that point?
Wow, that's really tough to hear. That must have been really rough for all of you.
It was hard. And there was another Oklahoma facility, and they were going through the same thing at the same time. So it wasn't just in Texas, it was also happened in Oklahoma, and they may have had more people than we had.
Were you guys talking to each other? How were you all communicating?
Mostly we were using Teams, but when we got laid off, we were immediately cut off from the company Teams accounts. So we had to switch to group text, things like that.
So what was everybody doing at that point? You mentioned some folks had moved their families, bought houses. What was the fallout like here?
It was insane. I mean, there was people crying and having mental breaks and just screaming and yelling. People had just spent so much money to relocate and entered into leases or purchased a property, and it's almost too much for you to comprehend. That's how I felt. I was like numb for a few days, even understand what was happening. And a lot of people now you're in this position where you're stuck in these contracts, but you don't want to be there anymore. So people were scrambling on how do I break my lease? How do I get out of this? How do I get out of that? Yeah, it's extremely difficult. It's not like you could just go back to your old life.
It must have been tough for you as well because you mentioned earlier that once you made the decision, you persuaded others to come with you.
Yeah.
And so that must have been challenging for you too.
Yeah, I mean, there was one guy, he's in his 20s that worked under me, and I persuaded him to move. He had a young daughter, baby basically, and his family was set to move out in a few days. And he was one of the guys renting a room from me. Just to see him go through what he was going through was too much. He was so young, he couldn't comprehend, he couldn't handle it. You know, trying to hug him and he's crying and let me go back. They offered him money and a raise, and he never got it. He never received the relocation money they promised him, and to this day, he has never gotten it. He went out on a limb, did what they wanted, and they just cut him loose without honoring the relocation contract. And also at this
That
point, when I got laid off, I hadn't received my relocation money or my raise either.
was this common across everyone? Did some people receive the relocation packages or it was just a complete
No, I think
total wipeout?
the earlier you moved in this process, it seemed that you got the relocation money. And if you moved in the middle or towards the end of the window they gave you, you didn't get it.
This is really difficult to process, not just your story, but then also the folks that you mentioned, like the young father and so many others. I'm sure y'all are checking in on each other. How is everybody doing in that laid off community?
I think everyone is doing the best they can. I have not been in touch with a lot of people that have found work since then. It seems like right now the current job climate is pretty bad. A few guys have found work, but the majority haven't. Everyone is really upset, and there's a lot of people that are just like, I want justice, I want accountability, things like that. But over the weeks, as the time has gone by, people aren't talking about it as much, and I'm not hearing from people as much, and that's kind of what inspired me to make my own video about it and to try to revive this because I want people to know the story. But people are going through a hard time. Definitely going through a hard time. There's still some people stuck in Texas that don't want to be there, and there's people that have moved back like me that are struggling here in California.
And for you, how are you connecting the dots? How are you covering your expenses up at this point?
I'm really not. Luckily, my parents are gracious and they offered me a place to stay. I'm on California unemployment because I couldn't qualify for Texas. Yeah, I've just been looking for jobs. I've just sent out, I don't know how many resumes, a lot.
And this is a challenging environment for sure. Have you or any of the other folks that have been laid off, have they been able to find any of that community or legal support that you mentioned earlier?
Well, I don't know about community support. We do the best we can for each other, staying in touch. Legal support, we had legal representation. There were some law firms that were pretty eager to take us on as clients, but it seems that as soon as the company filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy, I know my law firm said there's nothing further they could do for me. There's a class action lawsuit that's ongoing. I think that's out of New York. But again, when I read the legal filings, they were suing Canoo Inc., which doesn't exist anymore. So I don't know how that works. Well, and come to find out that everything was kind of smoke and mirrors and didn't pay their bills, and a lot of their assets were repossessed in the end or given back to the vendors, I think, in bankruptcy court. And
My goodness. As we kind of wrap here, stepping back, if you were to go back to yourself 3 months ago, 6 months ago, what would you tell your previous self?
I would tell myself to step out of my bubble that I've created at this company and take a very holistic look at the world and what's going on with the company and the economy in general. I had created this environment at work, and it was like this big, and it included some of my managers and my team and other people around me. And we basically put the blinders on to any negative news about what was going on with the company because we assumed that the board knows what they're doing and they would not offer us relocation just to, fire us, or the company's not going to go under. Why are they offering me a raise if the company's going under? We justified a lot of things. But if we were able to be impartial and look at the news about the company from an outside perspective, I don't think there's any way that we would have moved. And I wish I could have done that. I wish I could have just, I don't know, removed the thoughts about making more money and doing this and doing that, and had a more objective opinion about everything.
What do you believe this experience has taught you when it comes to identity and money and worth, things like that?
Man, it's hard to say because I still kind of feel like I'm in the twilight zone, but it did rip my identity away from me. Even previous to this whole move and the relocation, I allowed myself to get wrapped up into this company and care a lot about it, and neglected a lot of things and interests in my life that made my identity. So I'm trying to rebuild that and get back in touch with who I was, because who I was what I want to be. And now that, my life's changed so much, my only focus right now is to rebuild things to get back to what I enjoyed in life. And it's not this company, or it's not any company.
If you had the opportunity to talk to Canoo leadership and really share with them your heart and your experience, what would you want to say to them?
This might sound awful, but I really believe they knew exactly what was happening before the relocation, and they still went ahead with it. And firstly, I want to know why. But if I could tell them to, like, for one instance, to think about what their decisions do to other people, I mean, I truly believe everyone that I talk to from Canoo, we all believe they took these steps incrementally to protect themselves and to maybe put themselves in a position to be protected from liability and to gain resources. And it was so disruptive to all of us. It was insane. You know, I searched for similar stories. I couldn't find them. I couldn't find anything about someone that was relocated and terminated immediately. None of it makes sense. I want someone to make it make sense for me. I can't make it make sense. And the only way it can make sense is if they just come clean and say sorry. I don't know. I just feel like they didn't care about us at all. At all.
And it sounds like the community you described, working in California, there's camaraderie there. Folks are working really, really hard. This was something that you guys believed in, and you spent a lot of time and energy. You put a lot of love into these cars, and
Yeah.
ultimately, unfortunately, this is what happened.
We believed in each other, but I don't know about the company. Yeah.
These things are difficult, man. Like, as I've dug into this, preparing for the story, my hat's off to you and for your resilience and for your leadership and just the tenacity,
Thank you.
because it's one thing when you're like, look, I'm stuck in this state. Like, I moved here. I counted on you guys
Yeah.
to do this thing for us. I put my faith, my heart out goes out to the guy described earlier, the young man with the
Yeah.
daughter. Look, I put my faith in you, and you not just let me down, you let us down. You made me tell them to move too.
Yeah.
So maybe they didn't believe you, they believed me,
Yeah.
you.
You're exactly right.
And your integrity was put on the line, and your friendships were put on the line, and that's a very difficult place to be when it comes to building trust. It's a very difficult place to be when you talk about rebuilding trust.
Yeah.
And my hat's off for you for boldly telling this story, and they're just trying to rebuild from where you are to a new role. And my hope is that that unfolds as quickly and as positively as possible.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I believe good things happen and everything happens for a reason, and I just have to wait patiently for things to come.
Yeah, for sure, man. Really sharing things that a lot of our listeners and folks who've been through layoffs are actually resonating with, which is going back to who they really are, what they really want to do, because what they chased or what they pursued didn't really return what they were really looking for. And all the loyalty and all the hard work came back in a really unfair way. And a lot of people feel very unjustly treated, when they look back at how things happened. So what are you doing right now? How are you coping? What are you investing in? How are you spending your time?
Well, I think the priority for me right now is my mental health. I'm trying to take a lot of time to take care of myself, which includes a lot of exercise and a lot of being outdoors and a lot of being around friends and family. That's one part of it. The other part is, of course, I am trolling for jobs every single day. I'm trying to formulate a plan to allow myself to kind of be self-employed, but that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. So in the meantime, I looking for a job and trying to kind of ground myself mentally again.
The opportunity to find that is going to be really powerful because you're tapping into what you really want to do.
If I could just say one thing, I think everyone takes things for granted in life, and I think I took life in general for granted. I took the place I live for granted, the city I lived in for granted, my friends and family for granted. And I didn't realize how hard I had worked over decades to accumulate all those things. And I kind of made the decision to give it up overnight. So I will really want to appreciate things a lot more than I have in the past because things go away very easily.
Beautifully said. And I think there's a lesson in there for all of us. Ali, thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
The way you shared it so boldly and so transparently, it just demonstrates such a spirit of resilience. You were able to get back to California and ultimately start to rebuild. My very best wishes to you and your community, and really hoping that things turn around in the way that you deeply want them to.
I thank you so much, and thank you for trying to build a platform to get stories like mine in front of as many people as possible. Because not only do people need to hear these stories, but people that go through these things need to be able to connect with each other.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Folks, thank you for joining us again for another episode of the Layoff Legends podcast. Please leave your comments and questions for Ali or myself in the section below. We will answer those personally and be able to get more information out to you when we can. And we'll also leave links to any resources that hopefully can help others that are going through this similar experience. Thank you again for watching, and we hope to see you on the next episode.